This is just a question. Would you go after DeAndre Hopkins? Would you go after Hopkins? Would you go after him? $19.4 million this year. Hold on. A $30 million cap hit. 2024, 14.9 with a $26 million cap hit. A lot of money. And on June 6th, he'll be 31. Now, here. This is how you do this. If you're Howie, there's not a team in the National Football League that's going to pay $20 million for a 31-year-old wide receiver. Shouldn't you just wait for him to get cut? And no one's trading with those numbers. You're talking about a $57 million cap hit in 2 years combined. You're not making a trade for that. Nobody in their right mind. It's not that they don't want the player. Everybody on the planet wants that player. Who wouldn't want DeAndre Hopkins on their team? Okay? Who wouldn't want DeAndre Hopkins? So you have a $57 million cap hit, and in salary, you have a $34 million salary over 2 years you got to pay the guy. Nobody's paying that. Nobody's paying that. So, do you wait for him to get cut on June? And by the way, Arizona's not paying that. Arizona's not going to pay that. All right. We'll continue this conversation here in a minute. By the way, I really thought that was awesome. Seth Joyner on with us for as long as he was, and I thought it was really cool. Surely Randy Cross played against Seth Joyner. Let's bring our friend in, and Randy Cross joins us now. Surely you played against Seth Joyner.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Seth was on some pretty amazing defenses.
Best defense you played against, or was it that Bear team? Or surely, wait a minute. Let me back this up. So you played against the LT Giant teams, the Reggie White and Jerome Brown Eagle teams. The Washington Redskins had a really good defense. I mean, of all the defenses, the Bears, of course.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Of all the defenses you played against, Randy, which one of those defenses would you say was the best defense you guys had the most trouble with, Montana and Rice?
I would say, based on the number of times we faced each other, it would have to probably be the Bears with Buddy Ryan. I mean, we played them, besides championship games, we played them some regular season battles too, both at Chicago and at Candlestick. But, you know, a close 1B are the LT Giants. Those defenses were stupid. I mean, they were really, really good. I mean, it wasn't just LT. That was a whole crew of pretty sick physical, you know, defenders.
Man, that's such a history lesson too on all those great teams that you guys played and won Super Bowls with. Let me ask you something here and about your 49er team. Do you think the Yorks do a good job running that franchise?
Yeah, you know, I really think so. Everybody, when these guys buy these sort of side acts, you know, the side acts nowadays go for $3-4 billion. But, you know, back in the day, it takes a little while. Even when you're spending all that money, you just don't jump in this business and figure it out. And the Yorks had some early issues and struggles, but I tell you, when they hired John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, to me, the real sign was that Jed and company had great faith in these guys. They gave them 6-year contracts, and Dan, you know, in this business, 6-year contracts, that's just this side of a lifetime contract. Yep. And they keep extending those deals for those guys, and that's I think they've done an incredible job owning this football team and surrounding those two guys with a consistent crew. You know, how many of their front office guys have gotten poached? How many of their staff guys have been poached? So, yeah, I think it shows from the top down they're doing a hell of a job in San Francisco.
Randy, do you think it's harder to win today than back in your time with Mr. DeBartolo and John McVay? And, you know, you guys had so much clarity in your front office. You had really three dudes making the decision. Carmen came later. It was John, it was Eddie, and it was Bill. And it was a three-headed monster there that was running that great franchise into 5 Super Bowls. But do you think it's harder today because of all the turnover you get every year with the cap and such? And like you said, the poaching, is it tougher to be more consistent like you guys were back in the day?
Well, I think that aspect of football, Dan, is just like almost every other aspect of football. It's impossible to compare through eras, offense, defense, line play, quarterbacks. It's just such a different game now. And I think when you see these organizations that excel over these last, let's say, 2 decades, since 2000, it's those organizations that not only do a great job with personnel, but they adapt all the way through their organizations. You know, it depends, you know, who they're hiring, you know, what they're hiring for, what they're emphasizing off the field. Because, you know, off the field was important when I played, but nowadays, your nutrition people, your health people, your mental health people, just go down the list of all the extra kind of categories you have in these organizations and moving parts that can go wrong. So when you start getting it right, I think it's great that a lot of people start to notice.
You know, Randy, I think the reason that during our era, that organizations really didn't care a lot about off the field is because a lot of that was in-house. And now social media has taken that out of the house and put it more in the public eye. So it becomes, and again, if you don't know circumstances, all you are headline readers, because this country, we're headline readers. We don't read facts. Facts don't matter. We're headline readers, and social media is the ultimate outhouse wall of headlines. So do you think that that's kind of where that is now, where teams have to care more because social media has made these teams have to care?
Yeah, well, look at the draft and look at the guys and what they go through in this process. It's down to the micron now. I mean, it's down to the mini character trait or flaw. It's gotten pretty crazy in that regard, but you know, thank goodness it still has a lot to do with, you know, a lot of old instincts that some guys are just born with, and you see that once in a while. And the best example I think we've seen in a while was last year when, you know, Brock Purdy, as Mr. Irrelevant, can come in and go 7-1, play the way he did, and evade notice. Let's put it that way. We won't blame everybody because the Niners passed on him, 6-7 times too. But it's just crazy when you have that happen in this type of environment, when you get everybody that scrutinize the game so much. But one thing's been consistent, Dan. When I played, when you played, over the last 20, 30 years, when you get after the draft, you've got a lot of pissed off people getting ready to go to camp because these guys all thought they were first rounders. And they went in the 3rd round or the 4th round, or they didn't get drafted. So, you know, it's very consistent that there are going to be some veterans out of jobs based on, you know, guys that can be properly motivated. Other guys don't have that sort of DNA. They don't get that. They don't get pissed off about that. I know, you know, it bothers a lot of people really, really bad. And I think it's a great motivating factor.
Oh, I think it motivated Brady. There's no getting around it. He posts that picture of him looking like Ichabod Crane on his Twitter page every year, and his 5'9" 40. I mean, he does it every year. He puts.
Would you draft that?
Absolutely not. I mean, and you know what I love too, like you just said, the Patriots drafted the GOAT. Yeah, well, they missed on him 5 times too. They passed on him I mean, this guy kind of fell out of the sky like a snowflake. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's fun to see when you get guys that are, 6th, 7th round like that, and you compare that to the guys that are drafted early and get their chances and kind of – I'll give you a great example. When was the last time we heard anything about Zach Wilson? I mean, Aaron Rodgers has sucked all the oxygen out of the room in New York. I got done. I played golf today.
Wait, Randy, I had to think about who you're talking about for a second. I was like, who?
I come in, I look at the TV, and the headline on the crawl says Aaron Rodgers struggles with ankle in minicamp. And I was like, it's a minicamp. I mean, what's the deal? And I started laughing. I said, well, that just means maybe they put Zach Wilson in. And the guy I'm sitting next to looks at me and goes, Zach who? only the number 2 pick 2 years ago.
Hey, well, that leads me to this. So the 49ers today, we're talking about, hey, looks like Sam Darnold is going to be in a good position to potentially be the opening day starter in week 1 for the Niners. I mean, I got to tell you something, Randy. If I'm Trey Lance, I'm not in a good place right now because to me, I mean, look at the equity. And to me, the only thing that saves the face for John Lynch a little bit is if that Mr. Irrelevant does pan out, because then you go, okay, we missed on that, but we got a franchise guy here. You know how it all works out. Everyone kind of covers their ass. Like when RG3 got hurt, Shanahan drafted Cousins in the latter round, so that kind of covered that a little bit. I mean, if you're Trey Lance, I mean, he ran Carthon in Tennessee. I mean, do you think about potentially moving this guy? And I say this to you, Randy, because if you play that guy and he sucks in the early part of the season, the more he sucks, the more that value gets sucked out of what that guy could bring for the Niners. Mm-hmm. So to me, if you play him, you better be damn sure he's good because at least you have the illusion that he's still a first-round pick, just not with a lot of reps. But you start getting bad tape, as you know, on tape.
Yeah.
That thing's going south quick like Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of stress on Sam Darnold and Trey Lance's arms in training camp. Because obviously, did you see that article today about Brock Purdy's elbow? ESPN did a great job on that, explaining it and how they did it and what they did. And I thought the same thing when I saw him at the game and he's high-fiving people with his right arm. I was like, oh, don't do that. But, if he's going to be able to be recovered and compete by camp, maybe in the first preseason game or so, you're going to see a lot of Darnold, maybe the second one, but you'll see some Trey Lance. I think word like that leaking out is kind of a potential firecracker in your ear if you're Trey Lance. I mean, it's not good from the standpoint of something you say that comes out as public for a guy you gave up that much for. And I think that guy's got a hell of a lot of talent, and I think he's going to be pretty good.
So you're high on him.
Well, Sam Darnold's kind of had his shot. We know what Sam Darnold can do and can't do. What the 2 guys that are with him in San Francisco, if Brock Purdy can throw, and Brock Purdy, we know he can move, we know he can do what he can do. It's him, it's Trey, then it's Sam. And I think it's close between Trey and Purdy. And if Sam's got to play some early and throw a lot, I think that's great. But, if your future's locked into a guy you sign like that as a free agent, he's not an insurance policy. He's a scream for help.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then, though, Kyle Shanahan. My producer came up with a great line, and I think it's appropriate, and I think it fits Mike Shanahan. I mean, for all the accolades people give him, for how good they think he is as a coach, at the end of the day here, Randy, you just can't put your name on the test and say you passed it. You got to kind of like come through here a little bit. And I think I may have even brought this up with you. I mean, protecting his quarterbacks has not been something that he's been really good at. I mean, RG3 brought him back too soon. We saw Brock Purdy should never have gone back in that football game in the NFC title game. Trey Lance hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo hurt. I mean, could it all be coincidence? Sure. But I mean, it's all under one coach. I mean, eventually you've got to get the quarterback position figured out, don't you?
Yeah, you absolutely do. I mean, you absolutely do.
Doesn't it seem,
important.
Randy, they figured everything else in San Francisco out except that?
Hey, let's look at it this way, Dan. And you're like me. You're a little bit old school. Do you really have to go out of your way to protect your quarterback in today's game? They can't freaking touch him. They're not going to hurt him necessarily. I mean, that was a freak thing that happened to Purdy. So you're designing your offense, and rightfully so, is designed to do this and do that down the field. And that's something that Kyle Shanahan is good at. His quarterbacks are good at. And, you know, if you're a quarterback for Kyle Shanahan and you get hit too much, you probably aren't getting rid of the ball when he wants you to. So I think the game takes care of the quarterbacks more than anybody else. I wouldn't blame it necessarily on a coach. I would say a lot of it's just freak luck. You know, it wasn't Kyle Shanahan's fault that RG3 couldn't figure out how to slide or run out of bounds and stand on the sideline in bounds trying to find somebody to throw to, and surprised that he get lit up.
No, Trent Williams has already told us about the medical staff in Washington when he was there. So putting him back on the field in Washington, there's some correlation there. I want to bring a topic up and ask you something, because you're there in Atlanta. And I want to ask you this about the Georgia Bulldog program. And I asked Seth Joyner this in the last hour, and Brian Baldinger brought this up. And we have we have Nolan Smith now. The Eagles have Jordan Davis. They have Jalen Carter. They have Ringo. They got a ton of kids from that program, the Georgia program. Baldy says he thinks that program is a really weird program. And hopefully we get Randy back here. Randy, yeah. So it's all right. He goes like this, Randy. He goes, these guys do so much rotating, and so many guys are behind them, that they're not NFL game shape ready when they get to the league, because they don't play a lot of game reps. They're either so far ahead or they've got 78 guys. And nowadays, right, Randy, you got to worry about the transfer portal. You got to play guys. You got to promise playing time for kids, especially at programs like Bama and Georgia. You got to play your guys. Shit, some of these places don't even have depth charts anymore, because they don't want you to feel that you'll jump into the portal if you're on the third team. You know, the mentality here. You think there's any truth to that Jordan Davis is completely out of shape for the combines and for his pro day? Well, last year, Jordan Davis was out of shape when he showed up for the Eagles, and he had to get, and that's a big thing about him right now, is his conditioning. Again, am I off base on this, or do you think there's something to it? This is what Baldinger said to me. And he said that program's a little weird. There's a lot of great players there.
Yeah, I agree with the great players. I think they and Alabama are very similar in that program you compete for everything, including oxygen. And I mean, on a daily basis, you compete for reps, you compete for attention in the meeting room. I mean, you compete for everything. And I think it's different in the pros. I think it's different when they get drafted. So I believe there's more to that than that. It's kind of that adjustment that, I mean, if you're competing for reps in practice and you're competing constantly to be noticed, you don't have to be noticed as a pro. You were noticed. You were drafted. You're supposed to know how to do that. You know, it's kind of a maturity issue, I think, with some of these guys. And that's not something that necessarily just comes home and lays at the feet of the coaches. I think this game has seen guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban do things and build things unlike we've seen anybody do in college football. And Kirby's still in the middle of it. So he may have 3 or 4 or 5 guys.
Oh, I think he's at the beginning of it
again next year.
I think he's at the beginning. Randy, I don't think he's in the middle of it. I think he's at the beginning of it.
Yeah, so I think, Dan, I think part of it's that. I think part of it is it's so uber competitive in
Yeah.
those programs that when you get drafted, it's like a relief. It's a sigh. It's, oh, okay, I'm going there. I'm a number one pick, but hey, I'm the guy. I'm getting all this money. I can go up there and play, but it's not the same. You're not competing until the light switches on or somebody lights you up just to let you know that, hey, you're getting paid and we want our money's worth. I think that'll be a motivational factor too, but I think a lot of it is that.
Boy, I'm you're right on with it, because I'm at Miami. I got Cortez Kennedy, Russell Maryland playing behind me, and I got Jerome Brown playing next to me, and they got Jimmy Jones and a bunch of other guys 4 deep behind these guys, and you're in those 9-on-7s, or you're in, inside drills and shit, and you're in there competing. I tell people this: I competed more Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday than I did on Saturdays. Those are my tougher games. So you're right. So you think the internal competition of the program itself is the true competition for those programs like Bama and Georgia. It's tougher to compete Thursdays than it is on Saturdays at Alabama and Georgia.
And how can a pro team replicate that atmosphere?
They can't. They don't have enough bodies.
They don't. So I think that's something. If you're a coach, you're an organization, and you're drafting some of these guys from these programs, you've got to allow for that. You've got to figure out a way to be that motivator, or to give them something that's going to keep the prod on them. And it's not insults.
No,
it's not that. It really isn't. It's just you're surrounded, and
it's competing.
You were in that kind of atmosphere. So yeah, I think that's really important, and I think it's a big factor.
2 last questions. I want to ask you one on Dak. Big year for him coming up. He's going to make $50 million, and next year the cap hit for the Cowboys is even bigger. Is this a do or die year for him, in your opinion? Because how many times are you going to pay a guy $50 million, Randy, get bounced in the opening round, not have a great year last year? I mean, again, here's another guy putting his name on the test, but not really, passing the test. It's just, are the Dallas Cowboys in a position now? Would you extend him at the end of this year if you're Jerry Jones?
If you get the result you want, like a couple more playoff wins.
So there's been 3 in 30 years.
Yeah, I know. I know. I know. It's as a 49er, it's kind of been hard not to enjoy.
Wait, quick. Do you hate the Rams more or the Cowboys more?
Yes. but on Dak, it's a bottom line business. It really, really is. And that's what I love so much about some of these organizations like San Francisco, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Dallas in this case, with the Joneses running it. If it's not a championship of some kind, whether it's an NFC or a Super Bowl, it's not a successful, happy season. And there aren't that many teams in this league where that kind of pissed off attitude happens after your last game. A lot of teams go, hey, we went 9-8, or we went 10-7, or not bad, we made the playoffs. What a crock that is. It was a failure for the Niners. It was a failure for the Bills. Anybody that didn't get to that Super Bowl and win, you just represent, as a team in the Super Bowl that doesn't win the game, you just represent the other 30 losers.
As a guy who never lost one of those, so I just want that to be clear. So finally here, would you enjoy blocking for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I would. Because he's one of those guys where where he's going to be, and if he's not there, I love blocking for somebody that's got some movement to him, because
So do you enjoy blocking more for Joe, or Joe had movement early because Bill moved him to half the field, so he Bill did him so right. He gave him Bill told me he gave him half the field, and then when Joe saw the whole field, it was just lights out. But after he lost a little bit of his mobility, he became more of a pocket guy. But early in his career, he was more mobile. You agree?
Oh, he was very mobile, very mobile. So I'd love to block for somebody like Aaron Rodgers. I love his attitude. I love his arm. I like the way he plays. You know, as an offensive lineman, I think he'd be a dream to block for because, you know, besides that, I love quarterbacks that talk shit.
Oh, would talk shit or had the attitude, because Joe, I can't see Joe talking shit, but Joe.
Oh, come on!
Oh man,
he was terrible. He would.
Dude, I told you when we played you, I hit him. He slaps me on the ass. He goes, "Nice play, 93." I'm like, "Fuck you, man! He just threw a 25-yard touchdown pass to Rice."
He would do stuff. I mean, like in the middle of the game, he'd look over and the game would be over or the play would be over. He'd throw the ball. He'd get knocked down on the ground. He'd look up and it was Randy White. And he'd go, "Oh, hey, Randy, how you doing? I didn't even know you were out here." You know?
Oh, my God. That's fantastic. Randy, it is always great catching up with you, my friend. What a great conversation today, man. Owner of 3 Super Bowls and our friend. By the way, don't forget college football this coming fall. You can see Randy talking some college ball with CBS Sports Network. Randy, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it, man.
You got it, my friend Randy Cross. Fantastic stuff there, man. How about that, man? Last 2 hours. So 4 Super Bowls, is that right? 4 Super Bowls. Randy with 3, Seth with 1. Right? Kind of good, right? We're good. By the way, Bruce Arians tomorrow, 5:30. How you doing? Hey, and don't ask me. Somebody asked me the other day, Sileo, how do you? I don't know. I don't know. Jesus, you know what? You want to hear something crazy? Look at all this shit that I prepared for you today. And everybody brought content today, including you, by the way. So we're going to hit our topics in the Power Hour. Hit the like button. Hour 3 coming up. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google